This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome, everyone. This is one of Novak's webinar series, which we feel have been pretty successful. We've covered a lot of ground. We've had a lot of great guest presenters. We've had Novak staff do a few of these, and they've gone really well. Not only have we had good participation when they happen live, we also, as you heard, record all of them, and ultimately they will be put up on our website. And can be accessed through the online resources hub of nohvcc.org. Perhaps one of the people we may have overlooked initially to do one of these presentations in the first year is our own chairman, Dan Clean. That name's probably familiar to most of you on the phone. If not, I can personally attest that Dan's not only a great OHV enthusiast, a great ambassador for our sport, a great board chairman to Novak, but also a pretty decent guy. Although it's really hard to get me to say that, especially when I'm being recorded, but it is true. And we're delighted that Dan has agreed to walk us through his presentation about learning how to put on a veterans ride. I personally have had the opportunity to talk with Dan about this issue on several occasions, and his passion really shines through. And it's just a really, really neat story of what they have going in Iowa there that you're about to hear all about. But it's also really a call to action because Dan recognizes the value, and he'll share that with you in just a minute, of these rides and what they can mean, and not only what they mean to the individuals who get a chance to participate, but for the people who are involved in putting them on. And they're a really, really cool thing to do. So we really wanted to have the opportunity to have Dan talk about what he did to make his veterans ride successful, and how you might be able to replicate that in your own states. And we'll be able to post this, like I said, on our website, and hopefully others will be able to avail themselves of this information as well, and we can get a growing movement. But right before we get Dan started, I want to talk about how we interact on our webinars. We found that when there's a bunch of talking back and forth among participants and presenters, we really get lines that are bad. It's hard to hear. People are unsure when to talk. So the way we run these is, if you look on my screen, it's on the right side, but there's a box where at the top you can mute yourself and those sorts of things. But there's also a function near the bottom that's the chat function. If you click on that, you can type in whatever you want and send it to everyone. And if you have a question that comes to mind at any point during this presentation, feel free to type it in. When Dan is done with the formal portion of his presentation, we will be ready to take some questions, and we'll hang on for a few minutes and give everybody a chance to type in the questions that they want to ask. Laura and myself will be monitoring those, and if it makes sense to jump in, we may, but typically the question and answer period will happen at the end, and we'll be able to have a little bit of discussion that way. And hopefully that suits everybody's needs. So mention that Dan is the Novak board chairman. He's a personal friend. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dan and have him tell us about these wonderful veterans rides that he's pulled off out there in Iowa. Dan?
All right. Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate that. And welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I hope today or tonight I get, if nothing else, I hope I can get a challenge out there to each of you to try and organize an event. It doesn't have to be a veterans. It can be another ride for people with disabilities, youth, nursing homes, anything. But we found that the veterans ride for us has been a huge success, and we're going to stick to it. And I'll just kind of go through the presentation. And like Dwayne said, if there's any questions afterwards or during, go ahead and type them in. I don't know if I'll be able to see the questions that come up, but if Laura or Dwayne would let me know when one comes up that we need to address. I'm on the road, so I'm doing this on my smartphone here. So just welcome to the thank you for a service ride presentation for the Iowa OHV Association. We got this started a year ago, and the very first one, we started off thinking we'd do one a year. It was such a huge success. We are doing 2 a year now, so we're scheduled in the same weekends for years to come here. But next one, Laura. There are around 20 8.4 million U.S. veterans in 2016, according to the data from the Department of Veterans Affairs. Next. 30% of the vets have disabilities as a result of their service. That is 3.8 million veterans. 13 to 20% were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress. The VA says that 30% of the people who served in combat are dealing with PTS. PTS does not have to be an obstacle for a successful life. There were an estimated 300,000 post-9/11 veterans who have philosophical need or psychological needs, mainly post-PTS disorder and traumatic brain injury. 22% are diagnosed with a depressive disorder. 22 veterans commit suicides daily, which is an occurring roughly about 1 every 80 minutes. The number is even higher with special forces. 84% of veterans say that the American public has little awareness of the challenges facing them or their families. There are many programs like Wounded Warriors that we've all heard about, helping our disabled veterans, but they're often limited to the number of veterans that they can help. They have a funding challenge, and I've talked to many veterans that have attended Wounded Warrior events, and they said they have a waiting list, and just a fraction of the people on the waiting list get addressed. So our challenge is that we can change that. Each of us can help by organizing our own smaller and local events. One example is our Iowa OHV associations. Thank you for your service ride that we hold at the Iowa Veterans Home in Marshalltown, Iowa. Opened in 1887, the Iowa Veterans Home was one of the largest of the 153 state-owned facilities for veterans in the nation. It is currently home to over 500 veterans. They have capacity of up to 700, but they're currently right now just over 500 veterans. This is an aerial picture of the Veterans Home complex in Marshalltown. We actually have an ATV park or OHV park located in the city of Marshalltown. It's about a 120-acre facility. Originally, when I first went to the Veterans Home to talk about the concept of a veterans ride, we were going to bus the veterans down to our park, which is across town, roughly 2 miles away. But once we got talking, I had never personally been at the Iowa Veterans Home before, had no concept of how big an area it is. It's roughly 150 acres. But if you can see along the north or the top of the picture there, there's the Iowa River. They have a trail along there. It's about a mile of riverfront. So we were able to utilize that. It was a perfect location for it. And it made sense to have it right there on site because we didn't have to bus the veterans. If they wanted to go for a short ride, they could, longer rides or multiple rides. We had some of them sneaking in 4 or 5 times and loving every minute of it. So it was a perfect setup for our situation here. I know a lot of the sites, on other veterans home don't have near the size there or the opportunities, but this one worked out perfect through the I'll show you a picture later on the cemetery area. It looks like a miniature Arlington cemetery. So it's just a beautiful complex, worked out great for us, and made sense to have it right there. So next slide, please, Laura. On June 9th of 2018, we held what we thought was going to be the first annual event at the Iowa Veterans Home. But it was such a huge success, it wasn't even 3 days later, we were starting to get calls from the staff and the commandant of the Iowa Veterans Home asking if there's any way we could come back again in the fall of 2018. We even had more riders show up and take rides, or more of the veterans show up and take rides. So since then, we've scheduled 2 weekends every year. We went twice this year again. It's just going to get bigger and bigger. So, all right, next one, Laura. The first ride we had about around 30 Iowa OHV members and 15 side-by-sides. We are limiting them just to side-by-sides for just the ease of getting in and out. We didn't think we should try the 2-up ATVs or anything. We wanted to make sure we could get them in, with the seat belts, doors, and everything on them. The first ride we gave around 100 veterans rides and staff. Several of the facilities or homes or residences on the veterans home they have different levels of challenges or disabilities. Couple of the units are just strictly Alzheimer's and dementia units. So on those units, we have one staff person ride with 2 of the residents on a 4-seater side by side. If they're the 2-seat side by sides, what we've been able to do is have one resident in each machine and at least take one staff member out on the group ride, and maybe take 3 or 4 machines out on that group ride. But with the dementia and Alzheimer's patients and veterans, we did want to definitely make sure we had one staff member in there. So far, we haven't even had one incident or even close to someone getting excited or anything. In fact, it's the opposite. Once they get in the machine and take off, it's just been nothing but amazing on how much they enjoyed it and how at ease they were on the machine. So it's been great. Next slide. One thing we brought up was brought up by several of the veterans while we were out on the rides is they hadn't seen the facility, had no idea it was that large, or the river was even there, or had been down by the cemeteries, and just seen the other buildings. So it was not only educational for us as the members, the OHV members, but it was all very informational or informative and enjoyable for the veterans to go out and see the complex, see what's out there. I would say roughly 95% of them had no idea of the size or been out there. So it was a great opportunity for all of us. Next slide. And one thing everybody's commented on afterwards is we don't know who's enjoying the event the most, either the veterans, the staff, or the OHV members. It's just been great. Everyone is looking forward to the next event before this one's over. So. We have a few staff quotes. This is from Commandant Timon. This guy is probably one of the most impressive people I've ever met. He's been the commandant of the Veterans Home for less than 3 years. They have 800 staff and over 500 residents, and he knows the names of each individual. And it just blows me away that I can't even remember half my family, let alone 800 staff and 500 residents. It was great. But his comment was, this is an extraordinary, out-of-the-box event for our veterans and spouses. We appreciate the time and commitment from the Iowa OHV members, making it a fun day. We are looking forward to the next visit. And like I said, since then, we've been back 4 times. We have our 2020 event scheduled already. Next slide. Many of the staff were very impressed with the event and thought it was a great opportunity for the residents. Mary was one of the rec therapists. Next slide. I was very excited to be part of this event. I have never seen so many happy residents. They continue to bring it up every day to me to this day. And that was Matt and another recreational therapist. And this, Emily is the the recreation, head of the recreation, and she's the gal that I started visiting with and worked out the events and continue to work with. And I have had many staff and residents express how great the opportunity was for the residents and how smoothly it went. There were a few residents who just were not sure about riding. However, once they went, they wanted to go again. We had residents sign up to participate. I'm sorry, my phone is clicking out here. Participate prior to the date of the event, and the list almost doubled. People were getting out. That we had residents come out for a ride. They'd go back in and tell 2 or 3 people, and they'd come back out. So it was just an awesome event. Next slide. And this is a quote from one of the residents. And we've had, I'll tell you what, every time we get done riding, all of our OHV members sit around and tell stories of the laughs and conversations and visits we had with them. It says, I got in one and felt like I was sized up to make sure I would be okay. He figured out I was fine, and then all of a sudden we took off. Boy, was it fun. I had one of the residents that rode with me. We came back, and the commandant was there and asked him how it went. And he said, it was just great. And he said, we must have hit 100 miles an hour on this thing. I don't think we ever went over 15, but to them, I'm sure it did feel like 100 miles an hour. But we had fun. A little bit about planning the event. This is the brochure we sent out through our social media. We share it on our websites, Facebook. We send it out to the Dealers Association. All the clubs were sharing it, so it was pretty simple. Just got the message out there. We had the motorcycle dealers printed them up and had them hanging in their and as handouts in their dealership. So that worked out really good. So it wasn't anything fancy, but got the message across. Next slide. Again, like I said earlier, we chose to work with the Veterans Home for right now. We have worked with a boys' home in Fort Dodge, and we've done one group ride with them. We are hoping to do some more with them. So you don't have to have a Veterans Home or facility in your area. You can work with the nursing homes, group homes, schools, rehab facilities, anything you think of that youth will enjoy doing the events. So next slide. Again, our challenge is to see if you can work with your local associations or organizations to host a ride. If there's anything I can do or we can do through NOVAC to help facilitate and get you organized, we'd be happy to do it. It really isn't that hard. Thank you for participating in this. We've got a few pictures here of the event. If we can go through those, Laura. My screen went black.
Yeah, Dan, it looks like Laura's didn't have the pictures on the presentation, but she may be looking elsewhere. But while she's looking for that, we can start the conversation. If you have any questions, now is the time to type them into the chat feature. Again, you can find that in the little box associated with the GoToMeeting. It's at the bottom, and if you click on the little triangle-looking thing, it'll open up, and you can type in and send your message to everyone, and we can all see, and we'll make sure we get the questions answered. But I'll kick it off. Dan, I think there's probably a ton of interest in putting on these rides, but I know personally my sort of barrier to entry would be, where do you start? It seems like when we started having this presentation that perhaps you maybe had some friends or already knew how to get into this Veterans Home, but is that true? Or do you have some advice for who would be the first contact someone would make to try and get something like this off the ground, be it at a Veterans Home or, like you said, an elderly facility or something similar?
What I did is when I thought about first doing the veterans home, I just called the recreational therapist or the head of rec therapy there to start the conversation. When I talked to the boys home, I did the same thing. Typically, there facilities like that have a designated rec therapist or someone in charge of the recreation. They're going to end up organizing or help organize the event. So I thought I'd start there instead of going, right to the commandant. It was, and then worked our way up to that, to the commandant or the head to get permission on it. It really wasn't, I thought the interest right off the bat on both of them was amazing. We had several comments from the veterans that the highlight of their event or a year is to go to Walmart or maybe take a bus out for supper to Perkins or something. One year they went fishing, they said, but this is just, they just loved it. It's an opportunity to get out of the home for a while, get some fresh air, do something new, meet something new, or meet new people. We had, like I said, we had 15 machines. We had about 30 people there. So the other members that weren't driving were sitting there visiting with the residents, helping them transport them, but mainly just sitting and visiting, thank them for their service, find out where they're from, and it gives them someone new to talk to. It's just very rewarding. Even two of the 4 events, we had rain for about an hour. We'd go in and have lunch with the residents, and when we went in to do that, we'd spread around to different tables. We didn't all sit together. We went and sat with someone else, and maybe even people that didn't sign up for the ride, and we got a few more to sign up that way. But that initial contact's pretty easy. Just contact the rec therapist, or just make a call. They'll hook you up with the right people.
So we have a few questions coming in, Dan, but to stay on this train of thought for just a second before we get to those questions, did you experience any reticence or a little bit of aversion to the idea of having OHVs? And if so, how did you deal with it? And the follow-up would be, if others who are attempting to put on a similar ride in their areas, would someone from the Iowa Veterans Home be willing to say, hey, wait, this can't be done safely and it isn't what you're thinking, if you think it's going to be, motocross or something similar?
Yeah, absolutely. I know they would all, everyone we worked with would say it's a great event. And we thought they have other groups come into the Veterans Home, but it's typically, the veteran riders or the veterans motorcycle groups. And that's more of a car show or bike show that they can't safely put them on vehicle or take them out and do the rides. Actually, our event with the OHVs and using the side-by-sides, I think, is not only the safest, but it's the easiest way to get them out and to do something, outdoors, and give them the opportunity. We have half helmets. Everybody has to wear helmets and safety glasses. So we furnish the half helmets and safety glasses. It's so much easier just to put the half helmet on, and for the speed we're going, and we've got the seat belts and restraints and everything in there. So, safety's not a concern. It's liability wise, we had several people concerned about liability. One benefit of the having it at the Veterans Home, their insurance, covered everything. When we had the Boys Home ride, our insurance, our state association, as one of our association events, we were covered there too. So that may be a question that some people have. But
yeah, it looks like we had several questions about liability. There's also a more specific question about particularly getting insurance for third-party participants covering veterans while using the machines that others own. Did you run into any issues there, or was that pretty well covered by the insurances you mentioned?
Yeah, we were covered there. Wasn't a big concern. The biggest concern we had as far as liability was getting the residents in and out of the machines. Some of them were pretty fragile, but just, chair bounds that may have a little trouble getting their legs in and stuff, but we had to make sure the staff, anybody like that, the staff was helping get in and out. One participant that rode with us in September, and he rode with us last year too, both times. He turned 103 years old the day after our event on September 14th. So we've had from ages from 32 to 103 now. So pretty cool.
We also have another really good question, and nothing is free. And the question is, did you have any participation from local dealers or other support, either in cash, sponsorships, food, any loaning machines, any of that sort of thing?
Yes, the dealers, we've had good success with the dealers loaning machines, local dealers. One machine that I had that Can-Am furnished us this year for a loaner machine was a 4-seat Maverick Max, and the dealer, when he loaned it to me, actually logoed up the side that said, thank you for your service ride, Iowa OHV Association sponsored, and then the dealer's name on it. So yeah, we've got great sponsorship. Our one thing is, because it's such a great event and people enjoy it so much, everybody, the rest of our members, cover their cost for motel and mileage in and out and stuff. So it's again, it's the funnest day of riding, or 2 funnest days of riding they're going to have all year. So we didn't have any concerns as far as people covering their cost or have to worry about that.
Excellent. We have a question that I can answer, and somebody has asked, will you be sending a transcript out, which I assume is of this webinar? The short answer is it is being recorded. It will be posted to nohvcc.org. You can find it in our online resources hub. It may take as much as a week to get it there, but there won't be a transcript, but you will have the recording, and it will include Dan's slides. A follow-up question that I had for you, Dan, is about how many, and I know this may vary based on the size of the event someone else is trying to put on, but about how many volunteers do you think that you actually need to make the event possible? And what kind of role do they play? You mentioned that, sort of some of the people who needed help, the help came primarily from the recreation therapists in terms of getting them in and out of the vehicle, but there's still plenty for volunteers to do. So what would your recommendation be on where would you start, on how many, and what kind of roles are they expected to play during the day of the event?
Yeah, because we're over 100 rides or 100 veterans rides, we're looking anywhere from 15 to 20 machines. Worked out pretty well this year. This last event in September, we had about 97 veterans ride, but what we found is most of them wanted 1, 2, or 3 or 4 rides. So it worked out pretty good, and throughout the day we had good weather all day, so it stretched it out. We had about 8 hours riding for everybody, but we broke it up. But I think on most event or most facilities that you're going to do it in aren't going to have that number of people. Of the 500 possible people we have about a fifth of them there. So the smaller group homes, or that even 2 or 3 riders or 2 or 3 machines with a couple more volunteers, you could start off doing that. When we did our boys home ride, we actually had more machines than we had people to do. So just it's going to vary from the size of facilities or who you're working with. I don't Boy Scouts group or something like that. You just depend on the size of the group, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. We have another question, and that is, were you able to obtain any local TV coverage for the event? TV, press, of any kind, newspaper?
We haven't actually even tried to do that for several reasons. One, the privacy of, we had to sign waivers that we aren't going to take pictures of the veterans. The only pictures we can use is what the the rec therapist send us afterwards, and we really wanted to honor that privacy, the protection of the veterans and stuff. So we get pictures anytime we want, and they have to have the residents sign off on them. And again, some of them with the dementia and Alzheimer's can't do that, so we let the veterans home share the pictures that we can actually trade, or share off. I think next year we may work on trying to get a little PR out of it, or just promoting the OHV community, not so much the association or anything. We've been kind of just holding off on that. Like I said, the waivers we need to sign, and we don't take pictures. Is something you do need to consider there. So.
Yeah, Dan, you touched on this briefly in your presentation, but I see a real hurdle for some people is you were very lucky that this facility that you showed us a picture of had, I think you said 150 acres, really had an opportunity to get outdoors right there on site. The river's wonderful, the cemetery, a chance to see that, and the other buildings. And you explained that some of the veterans who lived there weren't even fully aware of what their facility contained. However, if you live in a more urban area or in just somewhere that has a smaller veterans home or something similar, they may not have that right there. Sounds like you've done some other rides with the boys home and maybe others, perhaps that weren't on site. Do you have any advice for those looking to hold an event but don't have the same opportunity right there? Is there any advice you have for those folks?
Yeah, actually, and we have 8 OHV parks in Iowa. The other event we did with the boys home, we held in Fort Dodge, and that was at our OHV park, Gypsum City OHV park there. We have had a couple small events at dealers, local dealers. They usually have sometimes they have a small test track or off-road area. We've done that. We've had a couple on parks, county parks. So it's, there's the opportunity there, even in a parking lot of the events, may be a possibility if you're limited to size and how far you can go. But I don't think it's going to be too hard to find an off-road area, either private property or, a dealer or something, if you don't have an OHV park in your area or a trail system.
And I assume that whoever operates the facility is used to moving the veterans or whoever around in buses and that sort of thing. So do you think they would be able to handle their transportation?
Yeah, most of the bigger facilities like that, and even nursing homes and stuff, usually have a bus or something for transport. We've done one event that our association didn't sponsor or facilitate, but we participated in. It was up in Algona, Iowa. This gentleman is one of our members, has had an event for about the last 10 years where he invites in all the special needs people in the area. And actually they have group homes coming in from about 50 miles away, bringing in mentally challenged adults and youth for a ride on his private area. And he's got a farm with some trails on them. We had, I believe there was 86 different individuals that we gave rides at his last event, and that was in September as well. So there's tons of opportunities out there, and it shouldn't take us too long to find a place or a group that would benefit from a ride.
Okay, we have another question. Dan, did you get a sense for how long of a ride the vets could tolerate?
A good question. And what we did is we kind of sized them up as they're getting in and talk to the staff that's the helping. If they're our guy that was 100 just turned 103, he was bound and determined. He wanted to go as fast as he could, but we keep the speed down. So, it's pretty easy to tell when we're getting them in and loaded up and visiting with them, if it's going to be a 5 mile an hour ride or 15, or some of them we didn't even take down on the dirt trail. We may just cruised through the paved, our hard surfaced, road through the cemetery and on the between the buildings and stuff. So I think it's, with our kids at the youth home, they were raring to go, so we could just ride at normal speed with on the roads or on the trails there in our park in Fort Dodge.
Yeah, and that brings up another question. You mentioned that in some cases you had staff people riding with, particularly alongside those who had perhaps injuries you couldn't see, the post-traumatic stress disorder or dementia. Did you find that that those were more difficult to deal with, or did the staff handle it? And how did you deal with that situation totally?
The staff, the people that they felt may, have some issues or concern or worried about, maybe not enjoying the ride, they would ride with us on those, but absolutely I didn't experience anyone that was even the least bit concerned or got excited at all. It went very well. And the ride that we did with the mentally challenged, it was pretty much the same thing. We didn't experience anyone not enjoying it. In fact, it was the opposite. My right ear was hurting from the hooting and hollering the whole ride. So most of them were having so much fun that you could hear them well over the machines. And we had probably on the mentally challenged ride, again, I think we had about 86, and I didn't see anybody or hear of anybody that got excited or concerned about it. So and I'm sure there's going to be at some point, but so far we haven't experienced any of that.
I have another question, and then I'm going to cover a little bit of ground, but we are winding down. So there will be a couple more minutes. If there are any questions from anyone on the line, go ahead and get those typed in, and we'll get them addressed. One thing, this ride that we've primarily been discussing at the Veterans Home is unique in that it's sort of expected that no one who participates as a veteran would be operating their own machine. However, some veterans rides might be aimed at a younger crowd, and it may be that there may be opportunities for the veterans themselves to operate the machines. However, many may have disabilities that prevent them from operating ordinarily equipped machines. Dan, do you have any advice for those who would love to do a veterans ride, for people with physical disabilities who may not be able to operate foot pedals or something similar, and how they could get a hold of someone who might have a machine that they could use that has controls, hand controls, or an organization that has those kinds of vehicles?
Yep. And I don't know how many of you know me or have met me. I've been in a wheelchair for 32 years. I was injured in a diving accident in 1987. I have a Razor equipped with a full set of hand controls, and I have done a lot of promoting people with disabilities to get in rides. We have several events here in Iowa that I take the machine to, and it's one is the Iowa Spinal Cord Injury Association's event, and by doing that, I have probably helped at least a dozen people get machines set up with hand controls for themselves. And I've had probably 10 of those people come up to my house and ride my machine around my hayfield to get used to it. And they're the same hand controls, or very similar hand controls that they're using in their vehicles, their cars and vans. So it's a very easy conversion over to it, to modify the side-by-sides. Spinner knobs and stuff, if they don't have grip, or the same spinner knobs that they have in their vehicles that they're driving. I call it the great equalizer, the side-by-sides and ATVs and stuff. It's given me the ability to go out and recreate with my family and friends on an equal basis, and a lot of times I'm ahead of them on the trails because of the machines. So it's there's a lot of opportunity out there. I personally would be happy to help get you some information or anyone information on how to modify them, the types of hand controls that I found that have worked the best, and how to get them in there. They're pretty cost efficient to get the hand controls. They don't have to be the new ones. They're pretty expensive when you go to put one in your vehicle through a dealer or a rehab dealer or someone, that mobility dealer. They get expensive, but there are ways around that, getting, either used set, or I found a set of hand controls called the Sure Grip that has worked extremely well in the OHVs, and that's the ones I recommend. And like I said, I can help either find them for them, or types of machines that work the best on, or how to get them installed. But yeah, if you know someone out there that may have a mobility challenge, there's ways of getting them in and out of the machines that may help. Usually I tell people the first time you get in them, it's going to be a little cumbersome. Don't give up on that. There's, after 1 or 2 or 3 ties getting in and out, you're going to get it figured out how to get in and out of them easy, and how the hand controls and stuff can help.
Excellent. And so one thing that we as Novak staff have is the great honor of working with Dan. And I can tell you he's 100% genuine. And anybody looking to do a ride or something similar, or help somebody with a disability get out on trails, he's always willing to help. Can also offer that Novak staff is willing to help as well. You can reach all of us by emailing trailhead@nohvcc.org if you have any questions. All of us would be thrilled to try to help you get involved with something similar to what Dan's pulled off in Iowa, or even something on a smaller scale. Dan mentioned that we can all change what the situation on the ground by hosting small events. And Dan's been blessed to be able to take 100 people out in one day. But 5 people in a day matters just as much to those 5 people. So don't think any event's too small. Novak's here to help. Can also say that a lot of the ground that's been covered here, both about the Iowa Veterans Ride and about retrofitting side-by-sides with hand controls, has been dealt with on the Novak website. And if you search through our news section, you can see what Dan had to say about those things there, and maybe get some more information, or find out a way to get in touch with us. Thank you. Laura has posted in the chat feature the email where you can reach all of Novak staff and Dan, the Trailhead address. So if you could screenshot that or jot it down quickly, you'll know how to get in touch with all of us. But I would really just encourage you all to get out there, recognize that this can be done, recognize that there are people who have done this before who are willing to help, recognize that Dan is an incredible resource, and all of us on Novak staff lean on him, and we'll continue to do so, and can help be a conduit. All of these things come up every time: the insurance, the fear factor of being concerned about, is this safe? Particularly as you get questions from the recreation therapist or whoever you're dealing with at the facility. Those have all been addressed before. There are opportunities to overcome these hurdles. There are people here at Novak, particularly Dan, who are willing to help. So I really just want to impress upon you that this is a call to action. Get out there and do these things, and I think you'll find that they're rewarding, as Dan did. And I also want everyone to know that there is help available. So with that, I will hang on for another few seconds to see if there are other questions, but otherwise we're going to conclude the webinar. But I will offer Dan the opportunity to have the last word, provided we don't get any more questions. So Dan, do you have anything else you want to end with?
Yeah, I just want to end up with these. You don't have to have a group or event. One person, and I've talked to many disabled veterans and through hunting or hunting groups and rides and stuff. Just take one person out. You don't have to take a group out or an organized event, but all of us know someone that would benefit from a ride, just to get out of the house. We've had several people comment, of how this has changed their life as far as looking forward to the next ride and stuff. So you can touch and change someone's life by one day. So don't feel you have to have a group, a big group or an organized group. But, you know, if you're looking for a disabled veteran that all of us know someone, talk to your American Legion in your area or something, just get a list. It's not hard to do, but again, start with one and work your way up. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And I hope you take the challenge and help make someone's day great.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. I think you did a great job. And I think I speak for everybody. We're getting the chats coming in now saying what a great job and how informative it was. And I agree. And again, please don't be afraid to reach out. That's the primary message. You have help. So with that, we'll conclude. And I just want to thank everyone for participating. We'll be in Reno, Nevada later this month for Novak's annual conference. So there won't be another one in October, but we will continue the webinar series in November and are planning now for next year. So hopefully these remain informative and we can get people to participate. And as long as we do, we'll keep having them. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.